So, hi, I'm Adrienne Butler. I'm from Oklahoma, and I'm going to introduce our next session. But before I do, just sending a reminder that the sessions are being recorded, and a link will be sent to everybody. CEUs will be available after the symposium, and they'll be posted on the CSLP Summer Symposium website. If you have a question, just post it in the Q&A. Even if you have a comment, just post it in chat. And if you need access to captioning, a link will be posted in the chat for those who need access to that. Okay. So, our panel moderator for this session is Sara White. Sara is the Youth Services Consultant at the Washington State Library, as well as the CSLP rep for Washington's. Through extensive work with the University of Washington's Views 2 research study and the YALSA'S Transforming Teen Services project, she has worked to make her own early learning and teen programming more equitable and intentional, and to provide training for her peers to do the same. As Youth Services Consultant for the Washington State Library, she promotes collaboration, innovation, equity, and the constant pursuit of bettering library services for youth. I'll also briefly introduce the panel, all of which are participants in the YALSA'S Transforming Teen Services initiative, and they can wave when I say their name. Christy Fransman is the Teen Engagement Coordinator at the Hamilton East Public Library in Indiana. Chelsea Hughes is a librarian at the Prince George's County Memorial Library System in Maryland. Carrie Sanders is the Youth Services Coordinator at the Maryland State Library and the Maryland State Rep for CSLP. And Beth Yates is the Children's Consultant at the Indiana State Library, Indiana State Rep for CSLP, and is the CSLP President-elect. Please welcome them all as they discuss what's great about your community, extending your connections to youth and families.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Leah's here too, so we're all here. It's very exciting. So hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro. My name is Sara White. I use she, her pronouns. When this was originally advertised, I was going to be Linda Braun, who you may notice I am not. So hopefully I can fill her shoes. Thanks so much to this awesome panel for letting me jump in to facilitate. These are all really awesome people with a lot of really good insight. And I'm really excited to be here today to lead this conversation about how you can identify and connect with the assets in your community to make your summer services even better than they already are. I have a bunch of questions, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end for your questions. So feel free to drop those into the Q&A, not the chat, because we will lose you quickly in the chat. But before we get into those, I just want to say that I'm really excited that we are being given the opportunity to talk about this topic, about this summer symposium. Community asset mapping is something that's not only important over the summer, but I know that a lot of us are doing a lot of work right now to make specifically summer services more equitable and meaningful, and find new ways to serve our underserved patrons in our communities. And I'm really excited that this is happening now. This symposium is happening now in December, because now is an amazing time to start thinking about how understanding and connecting with those resources in our community can improve those services in the summer, because it takes time to build relationships and really understand what's happening in your community. So this will help improve your services in the summer and year-round. And this super knowledgeable panel is going to give you some great ideas on how to either start if you haven't started doing this work, or to continue or improve this work if you're already doing it. So I am going to change slides. I think there may be a slight lag, but it should show up at some point. So my first question is just, how do you describe community assets? What is a community asset? And I believe Carrie is going to start us out on that question.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm really excited for us to just spend this hour talking about our communities and hopefully being able to dig into them and learn a little bit more about them wherever you are. So as you think about the question that we actually posed as the title of this presentation, I think it's a really powerful one for us to think about as we work with youth and our families. And that could be wherever you are, a big city branch, could be a small rural library, could be a suburban branch, small town. But I mean, can you really answer that question about where you are? What's great about your community? And here's another question for you as you think about how much you know about your community. Is the library where you work in a place where you grew up and you think you know it well? Or do you travel into work regularly, but then you leave the library, you go home to a different neighborhood or location? And I think that can say a lot to us about how well we're confident in answering that question about what's great about the community where we work and where the library is situated. And so to help us answer that question confidently, we're going to spend some time today discussing what community assets are. We may think about community partners, but maybe the term community assets is a little new to some of us. And so I would say, my suggestion is that to describe a community asset is any connection in your neighborhood or in your community that provides an opportunity for you to reach and learn more about your youth, reach them, and to learn what those needs are of the youth that you have in your community. And that could include people for sure, but let's look at some other categories that can be considered as community assets. And we, Linda, in a past session that she did with me and Maryland about community, we played an activity called Asset Gories. So we've got a couple examples in our next coming slides about who else might be a community asset. And there's actually 4 categories here. And it might be a little difficult to read, but the yellow Post-its are people, what we mentioned. The green column are spaces and places. They can also be community assets. The blue is organizations and businesses, really tiny, but that's what that says, like we're at the eye doctor here. And then the pink column is community services. So just kind of a way to broaden your thinking, whether you know your community really well, or maybe you need to kind of think about, new places maybe haven't been explored. This is a way to kind of open your eyes to who all could be around you that could help you learn about your youth and what they're doing to serve youth.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Does anyone else on the panel want to talk a little bit more about how you would describe community assets? Anything you want to add?
I should say it's just whatever's cool about your library. I mean, what's unique? It's all this stuff that is here somewhere, but maybe until you really take a look and start putting Post-its up, that you start seeing. But also, just what's really out there, things that you just never thought of, and also what's cool about your community, what's different.
Yeah, I like that. I think a quote I've heard that, of course, I'm not going to be able to attribute right now is you can't do anything with a deficit. So the idea that what you look at is what you have, like what is there, and what you can take advantage of, because there's no reason at looking at what you don't have, right? Because you can't do anything with that. Any other thoughts about this question? What is a community asset, or how do you describe them? Awesome. I think we have another slide here with some more examples too of people, spaces and places, organizations and businesses, and community services. I love this resource too. Is this a Jamboard that you made?
Yeah, it is a Jamboard. It was it's a fun collaborative piece to utilize in the virtual setting, and to have people just be able, you can draw, you can post those sticky notes, and people can kind of jump in, and you can see where there was kind of that emphasizing, someone liked some of those and circled them and hearted them and arrowed. So really fun way to do some brainstorming and some collaborative work.
And I'll just chime in and say, you can do this in something like Jamboard, or you can use real Post-its, right? Stick them up on the wall.
Absolutely.
Totally. Thank you. Yeah, go for it.
But as assets are everywhere. Once you start viewing the assets in your community, it's the things we don't notice. It's the green space that we drive by every day. It's the lady who's selling elotes on the corner with a cart. It's the grocery stores. I love that being up here on the board, and it's also things that don't have spaces necessarily. So I think the physical things are one layer, but then you can dig into the second layer and you can start to think, I know people have mentioned that people are assets, community organizations are assets, traditions are assets. If you have a once a year community fair, or if you do like a Christmas market or whatever it is. Oh no, my audio. Can you hear me a little bit?
I can hear you. It's just a little bit in and out.
I'm sorry. I'm having so many technology problems. I finally got my camera on. So that's just what I wanted to add about assets.
Thanks, Leah.
That's okay, Leah. I don't think you're the only one today.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to move us on to the next question. Which means I'm going to move us to the next slide. So my next question is just, how do you think about the difference between a community asset and a community partner? Because as we were saying earlier, we talk a lot about partners, less about assets. How do you see them as different from each other? And I think, Leah, you're a little choppy, but we can understand you. So I think we're good to start with you.
Okay, maybe I'll just speak a little bit more slowly and it'll give my computer time to get my message across. But so community assets versus community partners. I would say community partners are a subset of community assets. So if it's a partner to you, it's definitely an asset. Everything that's a partner, you can automatically count as an asset. But there are a lot of assets that, are there may be waiting partners, or there may be not. There may be just community assets that you will never partner with. And I think that it's really, it's really important, and it's one of the points of doing community asset mapping is to develop partnerships with folks you're not partnering with, and to expand your networks, and to kind of see how those collaborations, where they're waiting for you and where they can take place around work you're already doing. I think it's so important when you're looking at your community assets to think about where, oh no, it's that bad. Oh, good idea.
I can hear you.
Try to stop my video here. Okay. Is that a little bit better? Yeah, great. Okay, so your community partners, when you're looking at your assets, you can start to think about where does your vision align? Where are there places that you really want to be able to provide services, populations that you're not reaching? And look at the partners look at the community assets that you have that are doing that successfully. And that might be a good place to explore a partnership.
Thanks, Leah. Did anyone else lose her entirely? I don't know if you're still talking, Leah, but I can't.
No, I'm done talking.
Okay, good. It's hard to tell the difference between when someone's done talking and when
I'm done, especially when I'm chopping.
you're,
That's it for me.
you're totally great. Thanks, Leah. Does anyone else have a thought about the difference between assets and partners? I think that's a good way of putting it. And in case you have trouble hearing her, she said to think about partners as a subset of assets. So if they are a partner, they're automatically an asset, but not all assets are necessarily partners.
I like when she says, or ever will be, and that's okay. There are some that are potential assets, and there are just some you cannot force them to partner. I'm sure we have so many librarians out there today watching that like, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I can't get a response. And I don't know, you keep trying, but you also just know that, you can't force them.
Right. And they also just might be an asset in your community, and that's fine. Like maybe they're taking care of something that the library doesn't need to do. Right. So that's another difference too. So they're an asset, but you're not necessarily needing to partner with them.
And it could be that you're interacting with those assets and other groups or meetings that take place, and you don't do anything directly with them. They don't come into the library. They don't, and that's okay. If you are engaging with them, having conversations, learning from them in these meetings to know what they're doing and who they're plugging into, that you can benefit from that even if you're not doing a direct partnership with someone. You can still learn from these assets in your community.
That actually reminds me of Christy and her, oh, what's it called? Something of care.
Oh, yeah. So our systems of care, a lot of counties in Indiana have it. We've just merged, it's called a Healthier Hamilton County, because that's my county, systems of care. And it is a consortium that meets, used to be monthly, or I guess it is getting back to be monthly now, but they all meet. And these are organizations that work with families and youth in particular, a lot of them, and especially those that are underserved or underprivileged or have some sort of specific need, that really need some special attention, and those special groups that are out there. And so I, as a teen librarian, I started attending their meetings, and I'm now on their board. But I made so many partnerships. We've had QPR, like suicide prevention training. I mean, we've partnered in different ways. We've had preschool, what do you call, fairs at our library, just all sorts of things. But you learn about these organizations and learn about the assets that are in our community.
Right. So the organization itself is not necessarily a partner, but you're getting lots of inroads to other partners through it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really like the idea that this is a good way of also identifying where the deserts in your community are, that like if no one has that asset, maybe you can do that. Or vice versa. If someone's doing it already, maybe you don't need to be doing it. I think that was a really good point. All right, I think we're ready to move to the next question. We've maybe even started answering it a little bit already, which is why does this matter? Why is it important to focus on community assets? And I think Christy, if you want to take the lead on that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So why is it important? Well, the library is a part of the community. The library should be seen as an asset of your community, right? And we don't exist in our own little bubble. We should be seen as an asset in the community, but also a dynamic contributor, and a partner in our community. And I mean, we can serve our patrons, which is always our goal, right? We can serve our patrons even better by knowing what else is out there, who they're interacting with, who else is serving or there for our youth and families. What else are they doing after school? What common goals do we have? And it's the best. I mean, that's how we can brainstorm ways that we can work together, or at least be informed about what they do to serve our patients when they come in. And not to mention, pinpointing these community assets and shining a spotlight on them often has a return to the library. We should get our marketing or Carrie back on here to talk about, if you share their posts on social media, chances are they'll return and share your posts, and kind of working together. But I mean, it's a part of being a part of the community, and being an asset, but also finding them out there. What do you guys think?
Thanks so much. Yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to add about that? Why this is important?
I'll just throw in, I've been doing a lot of thinking and work with Linda Braun and Mega Subramaniam's field guide that was published earlier this year out of conversations that happened through 2020. I can put the link in the chat in a little bit, but it's just about getting out of our library world and being a little more public servant minded than library servant minded. And it's just great to totally have these interactions with those in our community with nothing about it necessarily. We're not bringing the whole library agenda. We're not bringing anything about us. We're just with them to learn about them and see what they can teach us about our community. So I just love that focusing on community assets just takes the focus off of us and opens up our minds and eyes to others in our community.
I think this is, can you hear me a little bit? I think that this is also a really important piece of being able to do community work and to build. A lot of that work is just completely centered on relationships. And if you don't have relationships, you're never going to be successful at that. So this is a way to start to build those relationships and to connect to different communities within your community so that you're able to start to build those relationships and those connections that you need to even become part of their understanding of what the community is.
Yeah, one thing I've been thinking a lot about I was a frontline librarian until about 6 months ago, and now I'm a state youth services consultant. And just realizing how many, like, because now I'm looking at community asset mapping on like a statewide level, and just like realizing how many youth serving organizations, just like there are so many. And one of my biggest goals has been to like take libraries out of the library silo and like not only be at the table of everyone else's, like we're there as a resource, but also to like remind them that we exist. Because I think that's another thing, is that sometimes the library gets forgotten as a resource. And there's just like so many tiny little sectors. And as much as we can remind ourselves that we're all serving the same people, the stronger we'll all come together. Awesome. Any other thoughts before I move on to the next slide? We're actually going to like dig into how we do this. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to move to the next slide, which is just what are ways that library staff can start to learn about, engage, and build relationships with community assets? Do you all have a recommended first step? Like, how do you start doing this work? And Kelsey, I think if you want to go first, that'd be great.
Yeah. So there are lots of different ways, and a lot of it depends on how much time you have to commit to it, what resources you have either already have in your area, in your library system to support you in this work, or what resources your library is able to give you to support this work. And of course, the support itself that you have to do the work. And so there's kind of lots of different entry points based on all of those factors. One really great way is to do the asset gories kind of activity that Carrie shared. But another really great way is to start with a Google map. And so okay, so let me back up. I think the easiest thing really is to start with the asset gories and really just start by having a conversation at a staff meeting. So really start those juices flowing of what are the assets in our community. As we've kind of talked about already, people probably haven't thought about it in this frame before. So just getting that spark of helping people recognize that there's so much more that to what the community has to offer that they've probably already interacted with, but maybe not put in this framework before, is a really great place to start. And just turning it into a list, that's a really great way to do it. And then if you have a little more time, moving it into a mapping tool is a really good way to organize it. And if you could move to the next slide, I can show an example of that. So this is actually something that my branch is working on as we speak. So I've kind of done some of the more like post-it note version of this before, and we are just embarking on a Google mapping version of this activity. So as you can see, we have already identified many really great opportunities and assets. And actually, what's been interesting is we're right outside DC, and we're in a pretty like businessy area. So there's a lot going on. So for us, asset mapping has been less about like figuring out who to find. Like we knew that there was a lot out there, but really narrowing on what we wanted to focus on and where the gaps were. So like I said, we're still in the middle of this process, and there's still a lot that we want to learn. But one of the first things that we did was I just had everyone brainstorm who have we already worked with in the past? What kinds of places have we already been to in the past? What kinds of places have you always wanted to go or learn more about or notice, or people that you've worked with? And let's just like get them all in one place so we can see what we have going on. And we came up with a very convoluted organizing system. But you can see there's a lot we've already identified, and it helped us see one of the interesting things that it raised for us, just as like an aside, is that we are the south part of a city that's very large, but south is a very nebulous term. So it's raised some interesting questions for us about like, who do we truly serve? Like, who does our branch truly serve? If we just think about a zip code that our branch is in, it's a very narrow field, but we know that people come from all different places. So that's helped us really define our community. It's also helped us identify some gaps. So then a next step that we're going to be taking is doing some community walks in the places that we don't have as many pinpoints, to see if there are things maybe on the ground that we're not noticing or not aware of, because a lot of us do live outside the community. And so really don't get to see as much within our neighborhoods, aside from kind of what we see on our regular commute in, or in the places that we frequent, already have relationships with around the county. So Google Maps is a really helpful tool. It gives you a lot of flexibility. You can make your own map very easily. You can use the people that you identify on your map to keep iterating. So share, once you have a first map, share it with more people. So we started with our info team. We're going to bring in the other branch staff to get some more ideas. And then you can also, once you've started pinning people on the map, ask them, what am I missing? Like, what things do you think we should look into? What places do you think we should look? And keep building out on it. So that's a really good tool. I think that was all I had to say. I did want to add, so these like Post-its on the left, sorry, they're like other gaps that we know we wanted to pull in. So again, like this process has been very iterative for us. So, okay, go ahead to the next example.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, you were talking about walking around your neighborhood. Not only like it's amazing, you can drive the same way every day and not realize how many things you miss because your eyes are on the road or something. So, or even just driving around your neighborhood with a colleague in the passenger seat and they're looking around. That can also help you locate new places. I wanted to share this example. Christy Fransman, who's also on this panel, and I led some trainings about connected learning in our state this past year. And one of the exercises we did was creating these community asset maps, because it's kind of the answer to, oh, I can't get teens into the library. Oh, I can't get this group into the library. Well, one thing you can start by doing is figuring out, okay, well, where are they? What are people doing? So here's one example. This is a really small town, which is why I wanted to share it. Their population is approximately 2,000. And we really love their map. They've got different icons for different types of locations. They've made themselves a little legend so they know what things are. So, you've got a little cross for churches, stars for educational, hearts for doctors / medical, etc. And you really start to see how many assets you have, even in really small towns. Because I think that is another thing that people get concerned about. And then if you'd advance this slide for me, Sarah, please. It will go. The next slide is the St. Joseph County Public Library, which most of you maybe have heard of. South Bend is where Notre Dame University is. It's a much larger city. And so instead of doing a map, well, first of all, they focused just on their branch because it was such a large community. And so it was just kind of the few blocks around their branch. And then they opted to do kind of more of a diagram. And I know the print is really small on this, but you can see the major categories: police, fire, local residents, local businesses, parks, etc. And so on those lines with the really tiny writing, what they've done is kind of written what their next step is, or what they hope to potentially do with those organizations, or how they might reach out to those organizations. So we wanted to show you those two differences between the small and the large, how you can really scale it. You could do your entire community. You could just do one particular population. So just teens, just parents of preschoolers, whatever. Or you could do it on a library-wide basis for a strategic plan sort of situation. So those are my examples.
I just wanted to say I did a little a little bit of community asset mapping with my Transforming Teen Services group in Washington. And one of the pieces of feedback we got was, this feels very overwhelming. Like there are so many things. And one of the recommendations that I thought was really good was start with a goal, so that you have like an aim, and then you can, like, let's say your goal is, I want to reach more teens. So maybe you'd start with your goal looking at like, what are the assets for teens? And then the cool thing about Google Maps is you can like create layers, right? So you can create like all these separate maps for different goals and then kind of like build them on top of each other to have a complete picture of your community. You don't have to do everything all at once, because you're right, it is overwhelming to think about all the things that exist in your community, or maybe it's not, and depending on where you are. Does anyone else have thoughts about this, like, where do you start question?
I think we have one more example, maybe from Leah, if you advance.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about where we started and how we walked folks through this process. This was the same connected learning course that we offered in Minnesota that was offered in Indiana, so that is the same. And we've had folks use Google Maps, and not everybody was thrilled with Google Maps. We just used that as a starting point because we wanted to be able to walk everyone through the same set of instructions. And we really told them to just make a list, start by making a list. The community walk, or driving around your community, preferably with a partner, so that you can look while they drive, right? So that you're not in that space where you're trying to do both things and cause an accident. And just create your list. And then when you get your list going, you can start to group the assets in ways that make sense. You know, is it spaces? Is it businesses? Is it like social service organizations? And then plot them on your map. And when folks plotted those on their maps, they used color coding, which is really easy to use within Google Maps, to show what kind of an asset it was. So on this example, I have no idea what color is what. I think that purple was some kind of a community serving organization, because then we encouraged our participants to create like an annotation, just a little description of the community partner. Is my sound coming through okay? Okay, so we would, as you can see on the left-hand side, you know, they're talking about what the organization does, any past history that they have with them, or any like annual event that they have or something like that, that might be something they want to tap into. So this actually is starting to kind of take a partnership lens and to think about, if this is an organization we might want to partner with, this is a good place to capture a little bit of notes on that. We also had them write down names and contact information of people at that organization if they had it, because then this asset map can become something that's shared within the organization, within a team or within a unit or organization-wide. Other folks can add to it and see the spots that other, you know, they'll help to see the spots that you may have missed. And we are actually, we're gonna give you all some handouts. I think we're going to post a link in the chat at some point when it's not super distracting, that has handouts that will show you how to walk through this process with, I think it's Google Map based, or maybe it's more based on the on like the diagram type asset map, which a lot of people wanted to do. You could also do this with a physical map. You could get a big physical map of your community, and then you could put post-it notes, or you could put push pins, and you could, you know, you can do this. There's a number of different ways you can do it based on what works for you. It would be amazing to have a map like this in your staff room in the back of the library, so that you could see this every day and add to it, think about it in that way. It'd be a little harder to do the annotations, but I am sure librarians could figure something out. That's it.
Thanks, Leah. That's great. Anyone else have any thoughts they want to add on this, or we can move on to the next question?
I'll pop in really quickly. I know we've got one question here about examples of what you do with assets or partners, and I've been thinking about that. And I think I would suggest that the first thing is really not necessarily what you're going to do. It's listening and just talking with those assets, you know, finding these after we've identified who's in our community and and who they're serving is just to reach out to them. It can be a cup of coffee, it can be a phone call. It's just time to get to know them, not about us again at all. It's just to learn what they're doing, and those kinds of conversations can evolve then into what is happening in the community that you may not be aware of, those gaps, what are the needs, and then after those conversations happen and you learn, then way later is when maybe the doing kind of happens, and that co-design begins to happen as you identify the needs, and then you begin to think about, okay, then what could we do together, or what could the library do? And it takes a while to get to that do part, I think. It's just so much in the beginning is the identification, and then just that learning.
That's an excellent segue actually to our next question, which is, how does having a knowledge of assets help build successful library services for and with youth, families, and communities? Like, now that you have your map, like, now what? Like, why is it great to have that? And Beth, I think
Yeah.
you are first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly important, especially now more than ever post-pandemic, or we're not post-pandemic, but you know where we are, to look outside of the library's walls when we're looking to serve our communities. We've long had this idea in the library world that we need to get folks in the door, so that we can serve them properly. But if we want to reach folks who stopped coming in during the pandemic, or maybe they've never come in, we've never been able to serve this group, or these folks, we have to look out into our communities. I always say, remember that you are still providing them with library services, even when they're outside the library's walls. So try to remove that mindset, first of all, and then figure out, you can use this asset mapping to figure out, where else are they going? What other awesome things do you have going on in your town? What needs do they have, and are they being met by any of those other organizations or people? Can you partner with someone who has some overlapping goals, or who maybe reaches the same folks that you want to reach? And ultimately, everyone in your area hopefully will want a strong community. So it's great if you can collaborate to make that happen. And you're also learning more about what your community needs and wants are, in addition to what assets exist, as you go through this process. So you kind of get a better picture of how the library fits into your community. And I do have a few examples, but does anybody else want to chime in before I share the examples?
Sounds like we might be ready for examples. Sorry, I changed the slide and now it has cute pictures, so now everybody wants to.
Pictures are better to look at than words anyway, right? So we have a few examples. So we had shown you that map from the Flora Library. That was the small town library that we had. And they were really excited when they did their asset map, because they realized, even though they're in a small town, that in some ways that's a benefit, because they knew a lot of people. So it's sometimes it's easier to get to know people in a small town because there's just less of you. And so, people resources, right? And we had a question in the chat kind of related to this. What do you do if you don't have storefronts to go to? Well, you just try to get to know the people in your town and figure out what they do and what their what assets they bring. And you could start with your own staff. What assets does your staff have? Any hidden talents, any hidden resources that they can suggest. But so anyway, back to Flora. So when we did this training earlier this year, Flora made this map, and they were really excited to get started. Their director was on board, and they told me that one of the most successful new assets that they had was actually the principal at their local elementary school. I don't think they had a real strong relationship with him before, but they got to know him. And they also learned that the school was doing a one school, one read event. They were reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and they were able to connect with the principal. And then they decided to partner, and they elevated the school's reading program by offering prizes at the public library for reading the book. So it really drove, we say it's not all about being inside the library walls, but it did drive traffic back to the library in this instance. And then I think Christy was going to share about the other two photos that we have there.
Yeah, so what's going on there in the middle? That is a foam party at the county fairgrounds. It looks like a lot of fun, and it was organized by their teen club. And you're like, well, maybe you don't have a really strong tab or teen club. Well, they didn't either, or at least COVID killed it. So they rebranded their tab to be called a teen club. But the rebranding happened and they got these teens to come in and they listened to their ideas and they did everything they could to make them happen. And so they had this foam party, and it's at the fairgrounds because they also took these ideas and then partnered with a community asset that they, had met as they were exploring their community map, their asset map. And I think was it the foundation or the, I don't even remember, but the community that they had at the fairgrounds, and so that they made that event happen that their teams funded. So they've partnered with an asset and had that new relationship, kind of cemented with an actual event, and they listened to their teens to try to build up that tab and did something, listen to them. The next one is a leap into science. They took a leap into science kit over to kind of a community club for kids, and they absolutely had a blast, and they loved it so much that they started bringing their kids, their camp kids, over to the library. I think it was weekly. So it kind of was one of those things where the library is doing something to benefit somebody else. A partner is not always, what can they do for us? Looking at your assets, but also what can the library do for them? Yeah. Those are
Sounds like
some
everyone
examples.
really wants to know what a foam party is.
Playing in some foam, I think it's, what it looks like. I'm sure they had some other activities going on, but they were able to work together. They got this huge foam machine and that the kids could play in as the activity out there and just to be a part of the community. And it looks like a blast.
That's a good reminder that an asset could just literally be a physical space. Like, you cannot have a foam party in the library, but if the fairgrounds has a giant field that they don't mind foam getting all over, you
I
can
think
do
it was a
your
part of
thing.
like a community event. Other things were happening, and so they worked together to put this on as a part of that.
That is awesome.
And Grace the Foam Party is, that I know of, in no way connected to the Charlie and Chocolate Factory. These are three separate examples, actually, of how this one library, this tiny library in Indiana, 3 different ways that they used, that they partnered with the assets on the map that they made during our training.
So we have 2 more formal questions that I want to get through fairly quickly so we have some time for audience Q&A. So I'm going to move to the next one really quick. And it is an important question, I think, which is, how does a focus on assets help to build equitable services for youth, families, and communities? And Kelsey, if you want to start with that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I think I can start to answer this by just summarizing some of the stuff we've already said. So one of the most important things that this focus does is it gets you outside of your library and helps you make sure that you're not just serving the people who come into the library that you already are seeing. And if you aren't thinking about the assets in your, I guess the other thing I want to say is that so often when we start to think about ways to expand our services, we start from needs and we start from a deficit mindset. And so what I really like about this is it really starts from a place of assets and a positive place. So you can really think about, what are the strengths that my community has? What are the things that folks have to offer that I haven't been able to elevate or highlight or tap into, or just learn more about so that I can direct people that way, or whatever it is. You're starting from a place of recognizing that even if your community has some challenges, which I'm sure all of us know of, all of us face some in the communities that we serve, that's not the only thing that you're focused on. You're able to identify the strengths as well. It also allows you to get creative about identifying solutions. I think in particular, we talked about, getting outside the library. If your only focus is on finding ways to get people in your doors, there's only so many barriers you can remove. But if you're able to think differently about where your event is where your activities are hosted, or thinking about yourself as part of a larger framework where maybe sometimes you're not the host, but you're directing people to the activity or the resource, that is a way that you're actually part of this larger community framework and really collaborating to embrace challenges, be more equitable, and really meet your community where it is. And so I think all of those things are important. And I can just share a quick example of, in my library, one of the most important things I think with thinking about equitable service is asset mapping of your community leaders. Because they are the people who know a lot and don't have any agenda besides like serving the community, right? It's not like to make a profit, like it's not like a business trying to make a profit, or even a nonprofit has a really specific set of goals that's organized around their organization. A community leader is just invested in the people that they serve. So I had the opportunity to interview one of our community leaders who is a parent of an adult with intellectual disabilities. And she was an advocate for this topic, but just like on a personal level, she didn't run a business or an organization or anything. She was just really passionate about it. And I interviewed her for our strategic plan just because I met her at the library one day and she seemed like a cool person and I wanted to meet her. And just by having that one conversation, it led to us launching several new programs. She introduced me to a bunch of contacts that we were able to lead programs with them. We launched a new service of activity kits for groups that come into our library, and lots more things that just happened by me sitting down and asking her, like, tell me about your experience with the library and your experience just like out in the world. Like, what are the things I don't know about living in Prince George's County as a parent of an adult with an intellectual disability, and also just like you as a person who is like passionate about this community and grew up here. And she's been an amazing resource and contact and person to have in our library. So yeah, just wanted to highlight community leaders are a great resource.
Thanks so much. And okay, good. Sorry, I'm like reading the chat. I think we still have a few minutes, right? Is the break from the hour to the 15 after?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
until 3 o'clock Eastern.
Perfect. Okay. Anyone else want to talk about equity quickly before I move on to our very last question? I just want to say really quickly, I have a quick, very fast example of this too. We had at my previous library, we had a group that specifically served the Latinx community. And we discovered that one of the leaders, similar to what you were saying, Kelsey, like we just found a person who just had a WhatsApp chat with everyone. And we discovered that that was how we get publicity to that community. Like they're not looking at our Facebook page or our posters, but because we had a connection with that person, we would just message her and be like, hey, could you WhatsApp chat your people and tell them we have story time at this time? Which we never, ever would have known if we hadn't known she existed, right? And then we are specifically reaching a community that we really want to be reaching. Okay, so our last question is pretty broad, and I'd love to have time to talk to everybody if we do really quickly. What is just one thing you would like others to know about the role of focus on community asset plays in library services for and with youth, families, and communities? So just kind of like a final wrapping like takeaway. What do you want people to leave the session with? And Leah, do you want to go first?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me? Hello?
Mostly.
Oh no, I'm cutting out again. Okay.
You're good.
I think the takeaway from this, the main takeaway from this for me is that this is just, think of it as a really fun, interactive exercise that you can do to start to shift your work into being more of a community partner and to really to find the common ground, to build the relationships as Curie was talking about, and to really start to integrate the library into the community in new ways. Well, I think it will just open up a ton of doors, and you don't even have to know what those doors are as you move into the process, but just know that there are many doors and that they will open.
Thanks, Leah. Carrie, do you want to go next?
I would just reiterate again that it's the opportunity for us to get outside of ourselves. And we're all so passionate about what we do. We love libraries. We love to help. We're doing that, but it's just a way of doing it in a very unique way that it takes us out of just our library lives and puts us into someone else's shoes, into these community asset shoes, to look at the community through their eyes and what they're learning and seeing. And then that just kind of circles back to inform what we're doing from our library vantage point. But we kind of leave that aside for a little bit and look at what's happening in our community through the relationships we're building with others in that area.
Thanks so much. And Christy, do you want to go?
So I'm just going to get real practical when I'm thinking about programs, and I'm thinking about summer programs. I'm like, all right, we've already done this. I'm looking for fresh ideas. I will either look at the community asset map that you have, work up a new one, look in different areas, look at narrow it down to different topics or age groups. And honestly, it just helps like brainstorm and that spark for new, fresh ideas. So right down to, like I said, practical application. That's what it really, really helps me with when programming.
Thank you. That's really good tip. And then Kelsey, do you want to go next?
Sure. Let's see. I guess I would just say that even though I just said that it's good to focus on assets rather than needs, I do think this is a good way to start the conversation and then do a needs assessment. That's actually going to be the next step in our process. And we actually are using a tool called Policy Map to do that, which seems really cool and I highly recommend. And they pair well together. But I guess also I would say if you're nervous, you can do this. It's not as intimidating as it seems. There's lots of entry points and different time levels. And it really helps get you energized and get kind of reinvigorated in the work.
And I think Beth, are you the last one?
The last one, yeah, I would say I've heard some great things. One of them is that we're talking about going out, and somebody in the chat said, where do you find time to do this? And I would just, it's about changing priorities or altering priorities, really, right? So it's easier said than done, but it's all about maybe getting administration on board, trying to explain to them the benefits. You could show them this video if you want to, but talk to them about, how beneficial it can be to your library and why it's worth spending the time. And then figure out, can you put a sign up on the reference desk sometimes and leave it unmanned so that you can take the time to go out and do that? Can you maybe reconsider all of the programs you're doing and eliminate a few of them, so that you can turn your eyes towards this? Because in the end, it will benefit both your library and your community. So yeah, that's my main point.
Thanks so much. I want to have time for a few audience questions. Before we do that, I just really quickly want to tell you about the packet that we've prepared for you, and there will be a link to this in the chat.
Just put it in there.
Perfect. It has information about asset mapping basics, the asset gories, and some conversation starters you can use to start having conversations with the people that you identify. We also highly recommend that shortly after the session, we were hoping like in an ideal world, we'd be able to do this during the session, but please try to start creating an asset map just as an exercise to practice doing it. And we also, someone mentioned this earlier, but we really highly recommend bringing other voices to be part of this process. We all come to this with our own lens and perspective. So the more lenses and perspectives you can include, the more complete picture of your community you'll have. This will be in the slides, which are sent out, but our contact info is all right here. I believe we are all willing to answer emails. I don't expect you to write these down extremely quickly, so maybe I'll just leave it up for now. But I want to make sure we have time to get to a few questions from the Q&A. So I think Beth or Kate, are you the question people?
Beth's not here, but Cindy can do that. I don't know, Kate, if you have. I've just written down a couple, and I thought in terms of time limits, maybe I should just read the questions and then you guys can answer.
Sure.
Is that okay, Kate?
That'll be great, Cindy. Go ahead.
All right. So here's a few questions. What are examples of what you do with assets or partners? What are the benefits of breaking down your assets into categories rather than just listing everything all together without differentiation? In rural areas, many community assets don't have storefronts that you could notice on a walk or drive. Any tips on how to best uncover them outside of word of mouth? And the last one is, can census data be used to determine community assets or a starting point to know the makeup of your community?
This is Leah from Minnesota, and I'm going to jump in and speak to a couple of those questions. I actually put kind of a lengthy answer to the first question in the chat, so I'm not going to come back to that one. But I do want to talk a little bit about categorizing assets, and I think that categorizing assets is a great way to see what is covered in your community. To start to group assets into like groups, you can see, oh, we have a ton of arts organizations in our communities, or we have so many programs for early childhood in our community, but we really have nothing for teens. It's a way to kind of see the big picture of what your community is providing already, and in that way to maybe see where you might want to plug in some areas that are underserved. And I also wanted to speak to the part about assets not being visible. You know, they don't have storefronts. And I think a wonderful way then to uncover assets in those communities is to just have conversations with community members. Ask everyone who works in the library, ask every volunteer, you know, is there a Lions Club, or is there a Rotary, or what kind of clubs do we have here that people belong to? And, you know, who has great skills at woodworking, or who has taught something before at the school as a guest. I think just to use your human resources to uncover that is a good way to go. Thank you.
Just going to let you panelists unmute if you have an answer to any of those questions.
Yeah, just to add about the categorizing. So in our area, for example, we have a lot of businesses, and I actually I forgot to mention, I added an additional kind of categorizing tool where if we've already been in touch with them, I made their icon like a check mark. And if I didn't, I left it plain. That way we could kind of see the difference between like what's untapped versus maybe already we've built some relationships. And so for us, we have a lot of businesses and we've already talked to most of them. So I'm probably going to like hide that layer because I feel like that's been done and like maybe we don't really need to like build on that right now. So that can be a way to kind of help you prioritize. And it also helped us see like there's a lot of health organizations that we haven't really reached out to yet. So that's something that we might want to look into in the future because we know that there's a big mental health need in our area. So if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll just quickly chime in, and I put this in the Q&A, but the question about the census data, yeah, absolutely. That's a great place to start if you want to learn more about your population, the makeup of your population, ages, everything else. And I kind of addressed the one about the small towns, but does anybody else have a response to that? And then we should probably wrap it up. No one else? Oh, thank you. Carrie has posted a link to some census info in the chat.
Yeah, we're doing a study right now looking at our communities, and this is one of the resources we're using as we're encouraging to just kind of not only tap into conversations and what you can learn on that more personal level and the mapping, but if you go to, you know, look at that data that you have there, and this is just one. I know there's several, but this is one that you can go into, and I'm not sure if it's going to drill down into neighborhoods necessarily, but you'll definitely get some town and some city and county data that can get people kind of started to see, and it does some comparisons too within what that looks like within your state. So. Yeah.
All right, well, it is noon. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to remind everybody that we will be including the link to the packet, and we'll probably include our slides and things with the recording on the CSLP website once that's available. It'll probably take, you know, a few days at least for everything to get posted. But just a heads up, if you miss those, you didn't miss them forever. They will be posted.
I was just going to mention, Beth, I think we forgot, like, when you're starting your map, if it seems overwhelming, if you do the Google Map thing or look around, start with your library's mission and vision and your strategic plan, and maybe pinpoint exactly where you want to narrow your search to.
Good point, Christy. All right, we're at 3:01 Eastern time anyway. So we should probably wrap up our session. I think we got all of our questions answered, so yay, go us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. And yeah, feel free to contact us if you have any more questions.
Thanks for being our moderator, Sarah.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks, everyone. So another 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 3:15 Eastern time for our final session.